Welcome to another episode of Toonami Pre-Flight. I'm Gil Austin.
I'm Jason DeMarco.
And today we're going to be talking Gigantor, some of our favorite 60s sci-fi. We've got a sneak peek of a video game from Dennis called Stories, and a Dana You Tweet Me watch for Gunbuster. But let's start off talking Gigantor, which Sean is, for some reason, very slow to get the graphic to go.
I can think of a few reasons.
I guess it's just the one overarching reason, but either way.
Mental slowness.
So, Gigantor we showed during Giant Robo Week in...
Giant Robot Week.
What did I say?
Robo Week.
Oh, well, there we go. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Speaking of mental slowness.
I'm a little slow today.
I'm on antibiotics. It's giving me a little...
You're on antibiotics?
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Yeah.
Go away.
No, it's cool.
When was the first time that you saw Gigantor? Did you see Gigantor as a kid?
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew of it, but I never saw it. It was never on TV when I was a kid, wherever I lived. And I don't remember the first time I heard about it. It was sort of when I was getting interested in anime and doing research and finding stuff, you know. But I think the first time I was sort of trying to find out about Gigantor was when I saw Giant Robo, the
right.
OVA, which uses a lot of the characters and designs from all of the works of the man who created Gigantor. So it's like some of those characters from Gigantor are actually in Giant Robo. They just kind of sort of remix them a little bit. So I remember thinking, wow, these designs are so distinctive. It's like these characters have been around for years. And I was right. So that was my first real sort of research into it, was really toys, like giant robot toys and stuff. And then when we showed it on Adult Swim, well, we showed it in Giant Robot Week, but they also showed it on Adult Swim, and I watched it a good bit there. And then it was on Sci-Fi Channel for a number of years, but I never saw it when it was on there. I didn't know that until I did this. I researched the show for this. They ran it for like 6 years.
Yeah, which seems... I mean, there's 52 episodes?
Yeah.
So
there's more, but there are only 52 American.
Dubbed.
American.
But they showed the dub, the Alan Ladd sort of redo.
Fred Ladd. Fred Ladd, Alan's younger, less known brother. But yeah, it's Mitsuteru Yokoyama is the creator of the manga that Gigantor came from. So Gigantor was a manga called Tetsujin 28, and it came out in the 50s, so it was part of the first wave of post-war Japan manga, and it ran for like a decade before they turned it into a TV show. And then Fred Ladd, who had produced Astro Boy for the U.S. audience, was looking for another sort of, what's the next hit? Give me another one. I need another Astro Boy. And basically they formed a company so that they could license these Gigantor episodes. They completely rewrote them, created a new theme song. I mean, very much the way that it was done back then. They completely Americanized it to the degree that it was possible, and then put it in syndication in the U.S., where it ran for like a decade, off and on, all over the place, along with a bunch of other shows. And it was popular around the world. It ran in Australia and kind of ran everywhere because, I mean, little kid with his own giant robot.
Yeah. And it ran in New York, but I guess it was before I was really watching. I mean, it was
a little before my
time.
It was the generation before us that really were familiar with that and Astro Boy, because like Mike Lazo, who of course, as we know,
hates
all anime and despises anime. One of his earliest memories and one of his favorite cartoons was Astro Boy, because he watched it as a kid, and he told me he also grew up watching Gigantor. So I think it's really the generation 5-6 years before we were born is when they were really, maybe a year or two after we were born. So we were just a little too young to catch the wave. By the time we were watching TV, it was Star Blazers and the 70s, 60s anime. We would see the oldest anime I probably saw as a kid on TV was Speed Racer.
Yeah.
Because these cartoons, Gigantor and Astro Boy, were black and white, which, you only saw black and white cartoons like on the Disney Channel when it was old, or maybe an old Merry Melodies black and white, but
not a Saturday morning or early weekday morning run.
So Gigantor is about a young boy who it takes place in the year 2000. Which
I also sang that when I was
sure back then was an incredibly so. It stars little Jimmy Sparks, a 12-year-old boy who has a control panel that allows him to control Gigantor, who has no mind or personality of his own. So if you have the box, you got Gigantor. And it was built by Dr. Bob Brilliant, which I think is a great name.
Yeah, what do you think?
There needs to be a rapper named Bob
time
Brilliant. There definitely needs to be a rapper named Bob Brilliant.
The total time on coming up with all the American names, like 10 minutes?
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it was comic book style, like very much in the style of how people did comics back then. They did a lot of alliteration, and they tried to name characters things that were sort of, represented who they were. So he's a doctor. He's very smart. His name's Dr. Bob Brilliant, because Bob was a popular name, and Jimmy was a popular, friendly kid name back then. So it was Jimmy Sparks because he's got a lot of spark. It makes sense to me because they firmly were pitching this for young kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how many episodes ran in the Japanese series. There were 52 dubbed ones, and then there have been several Gigantors since. There have been 3 or 4 Gigantor series. He remains a beloved, not hugely popular, but a beloved anime character. And I think I've seen the Tetsujin 28, which was the newest one, which is in the early 2000s, which I really liked. And that one is a very faithful retelling of the manga. And I believe that's 26 episodes, and I watched those. I have that on DVD, or I did have it on DVD. So Gigantor's still kicking around. Those character designs are so...
Yeah, I mean, the toys are great, too, so it's...
The character designs are so sort of singular that I think... you still see shows now that use sort of designs like that. I mean, they're obviously... referencing Yokoyama. I mean, and so that's what Giant Robo was an entire thing that was just a celebration of his work, really. But so we at Toonami, I don't remember how the idea came about, but I know that Lazo had gotten the rights to Gigantor for Adult Swim, or somehow we had acquired the rights as a company, as part of a library. It was like, oh yeah, we have Gigantor. And we thought, it would be really cool. We're doing this Giant Robot Week as little interstitials because we knew that we couldn't
just run
an episode of Gigantor because it would be ratings death. But we said, hey, in between the breaks, we'll run these little interstitials and we'll just cut up the episodes into just a little, short-sized adventure, and you just get a little history of giant robots since Gigantor is arguably one of the first popular giant robots. And then, so that was one of the things we did for Giant Robot Week, which I think is pretty cool. Giant Robot Week itself did not do that great. It wasn't like a huge failure. It just didn't do well enough for us. It wasn't like a disaster,
what we totally have to do is get all new giant robots.
Yeah, we were hoping it would kickstart some of the... We were hoping that some of the shows we aired would be kickstarted and that we could acquire some licenses, but that didn't happen. So in that regard, it was a failure, but it didn't do that bad with ratings, and it was a cool little event that people still ask us about. So what I have here is I have the promo and the Gigantor intro from Giant Robot Week. So let's start with the promo for Gigantor from Giant Robot Week.
In the distant year 2000, one robot is the hope for all mankind.
You and your robot are famous.
Gigantor. All week long from 4 to 5, starting February 24th. Instead of commercials, that's his spirit.
Yeah, Peter Cullen,
that's a lot of
course.
Information.
And then the Gigantor intro that we did.
Better call Gigantor.
That's what I'm thinking.
We are live for you and the robot Gigantor.
So that Gigantor Open was from Toonami's first night back.
Yeah.
And April Fool's, we aired some Gigantor because, again, we just had the rights, so we threw them in there. So yeah, I like the character of Gigantor a lot. I'm not like I haven't watched many of the original in years and years because it's so old school.
Yeah.
It's definitely charming and definitely.
Yeah, I don't think you would ever sit down and just bang out.
I mean, it's
52,
amusing, but it's not like it's more like background noise. It's like something you put on. Like, it just puts me to sleep because it's so relaxing and old school.
Yeah,
It's
they
like,
should just have it on at the dentist's office or
Really?
something where you can just
it's
zone
like,
out to it.
It's like, we'd better call Gigantor. And you're like, yeah, call Gigantor. And you just fall asleep. But I hope they keep making more Gigantor series. I still love... The little boy inside me loves the idea of a little boy controlling a giant robot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream.
Of course, I would use it for evil, but
Well,
that's another story.
that's the second dream.
Yeah, maybe they'll do another Gigantor, evil Gigantor. Nega Gigantor.
Face down against one another.
So, we thought talking about Gigantor was a good springboard for a subject that we always like talking about. So, today's episode is devoted to what is your favorite 60s sci-fi? Now, we purposefully didn't specify show or movie or anime because we just wanted people to sort of, go nuts and pick. So, for my part, I picked movies.
As did I.
Because there are a couple sci-fi movies in the 60s that are seminal, just sort of laid the groundwork for years and years to come. So I'm going to go with my first, most obvious choice, and, I hate to be obvious, but at the same time, you can't really talk about sci-fi, period, let alone 60s sci-fi, without talking about this movie, 2001, by Stanley Kubrick, which I used to think was overrated because I watched it when I was younger. And
I saw it really young, too, and was like confused, I guess.
Yeah, I just thought it was long and boring and didn't really... when you're raised in an era of Star Wars and Blade Runner, you kind of... It takes a minute for you to understand what I think Kubrick was trying to do. And so I saw it, I don't remember, 10 years later or something, which now would be 10, 15 years ago. And for some reason, at that point, it really clicked. And I've been pretty fascinated with it since then. I wouldn't say obsessed, but I have watched it many times. And there's a weird grandeur to it that I don't think any science fiction movie has ever been able to achieve. And I think it has something to do with the images and the abstract nature of the narrative, but also the music that he uses, the crazy discordant music, puts you on edge in a way that, I don't know, it feels more cosmic in a way that a lot of outer space movies don't achieve or aren't interested in achieving. So obviously the seminal sci-fi movie period, and definitely of the 60s, my friend Russ Fisher, who's a writer, writes about movies, just did a list of the 33 greatest science fiction movies of all time, and I disagreed with 90% of his placement of that list, but 2001...
Oh, you mean the order?
But 2001... And he left the thing off, which, come on, Russ. Work it out. Don't be an asshole. So, but he put 2001 at number one, and I have absolutely no quibbles with that. For me, this is the best science fiction film of all time. Blade Runner would be a very close second, but 2001 is... I mean, it sort of opened the door for Star Wars, for many other effects movies, and even now the effects do not look shockingly... The movie was made in 1969, and the effects do not look that dated. Most of the effects hold up really well, which is just a testament to, if you really care about your filmmaking, what you'll be able to do. So, this is a trailer that I think was somebody cut for an anniversary, of the movie, or maybe it was the Kubrick box set that came out a couple years ago. So I would just say, check this thing out, and if it seems like you're interested at all, you should watch 2001, because it is justifiably considered the best science fiction film of all time.
Give me your answer, do. I am crazy, all for the love of you.
1000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. We are all foolproof and incapable of error.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Whenever someone asks me if I have a problem, I always want to say, I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do. That's some passive-aggressive shit, Hal. So I think it makes sense to go from one of probably the most critically lauded science fiction film of all time to one that was considered pure pulp when it came out, and is still considered pulp by some, but is actually a pretty great allegory about basically man's warlike nature, but ends up being a deeper movie, and it actually, the later movies in this series explore race relations and all kinds of stuff. Like, I think that a lot of interesting stories have been told in this world, but I'm talking about, of course, Planet of the Apes, which is a hilarious and awesome, yeah, of course, Sean chose to go with some goofy shit, because he's probably thinks it's goofy, but, it actually does have some pretty resonant themes, and it's weird when you watch Planet of the Apes and you think about the TV show and the multiple movies and all the goofy stuff, you forget that actually this movie, Planet of the Apes, and it's also to do with the soundtrack, which is some weird, like, discordant jazz, very 60s thing, like, we're gonna do this movie about the future, we need jazz, but it's actually a really well-made film, and other than Charlton Heston going totally ham on overacting because he's Charlton Heston, it's actually a pretty grounded science fiction film, and of course, one of the original films that had everybody talking about the twist ending.
Yeah.
But so, I think what I have here is it was pretty hard to find, like, a good quality trailer, but I think this is the best quality I could find of the original trailer. So check this out. It's hilarious because it's a 60s trailer, and also because the movie had some hilarious stuff in it.
Discover Planet of the Apes. A civilization where humans run wild in the jungles. And the superior beings are apes.
Tribunal has placed you in my custody for final disposition. Do you realize what that means? No. Emasculation, to begin with. Then experimental surgery on the speech centers, on the brain. And a kind of living death.
Use Your Wildest Dreams is a weird tagline.
Yeah, I know. That's a pretty shitty trailer, but the movie's great. You should check it out if you can muscle through just how very 60s it is.
What's your favorite of the Apes movies? Do you have one?
I think Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, or is it Beneath the Planet of the Apes? Whatever the one with...
Where they march on Washington?
Yeah, the one with Caesar that they shot all in the LA Mall because it was brand new and it looked futuristic. And it's basically about the ape revolution. It's basically where the new movie just went, but the old version of that. I think that's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, but I mean, I love all the Apes movies. The only Planet of the Apes movies that aren't good is the second one, where they didn't get Charlton Heston, so they got a guy that looked just like him, and then they had Charlton Heston come in for a cameo and be like, "It's fucked up!" And then he left, and it was like, what the hell are you doing? And that one's bad. That one might be Beneath, actually. And then the one with Mark Wahlberg is really bad, although I still like the makeup and elements of that, but it's a bad movie. But legitimately, as far as science fiction series go, I think Planet of the Apes holds up the best number of good films to bad films ratio over there's been like
9 or 10.
9 or 10, and most of them are pretty good. Like, you can always count on a Planet of the Apes movie to be pretty good, which is ironic considering how totally ridiculous the premise is.
This shit's gonna happen.
So finally, I hope so. Can't wait. So finally, my last science fiction film from the 60s I'm going to talk about is the British classic Day of the Triffids. So Day of the Triffids, the movie, made a lot of changes from the book, and I think it's fair to say the movie's not that great. I just really love the book, and I like what they did keep from the book in this movie, and it was an early post-apocalyptic thing, kind of like War of the Worlds, where in the book, all of a sudden, these plants pop up everywhere called Triffids, and nobody understands how or why, but they seem totally benevolent. It's just that all of a sudden one day there are these plants everywhere and they're growing faster and faster, and everyone's like, huh, crazy, because they just think they're plants. And eventually the plants uproot themselves from the ground, and they are hostile alien invaders that want to take over the world, and so they start destroying everything, and people can't seem to kill them because their bark is super thick and whatever, and they just start killing everyone. And it's a really well done, kind of creepy science fiction book from the 60s. So in the movie, it's meteors that fly by that drop spores that turn them into plant creatures. And the movie, for the most part, doesn't really get to where the book did, but there's a couple creepy scenes, and it's just a fun 60s, sci-fi thing. So check out, I believe this is the trailer for Day of the Triffids, so check this out.
The Day of the Triffids, when terror rained from the sky. The Day of the Triffids, when the Earth orbits into a nightmare. When the solid world of everyday reality disintegrates. The whole population is driven by fear towards insanity. The Day of the Triffids, when destruction closes in from every side.
Pilot, is he blind too?
Blind?
It's going to be starvation, fire, pestilence. Anyone caught in the middle of it doesn't stand a chance. I think we ought to get out of here and go on to Spain.
How can you know it's any better there?
I don't.
Doesn't seem to have any central nervous system.
Then how does it move?
All plants move. They don't usually pull themselves out of the ground and chase you.
You have never been married?
No.
Why?
Guess I've never been in one spot long enough to get caught.
And now you are saddled with a family.
might have its points.
The day of the Triffids, when law and order are overwhelmed in an avalanche of terror.
So yeah, what I like about that is that it's basically more about people are their own worst enemy, because the Triffids are pretty slow, and if people banded together, they could figure out how to beat them, but everybody's just a bunch of morons, so society just falls apart, and that I'm very much on board with. So those are three of my favorite 60s sci-fi movies. Gil?
Nice. Up first for me is Fantastic Voyage, the Richard Fleischer directed 66-ish movie. He also did Conan the Destroyer and Soylent Green and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is a group of scientists are shrunk down to microscopic levels and injected into the body of this, I think he's Czechoslovakian, sort of Cold War scary time. We're smuggling a scientist out who's going to save the world, but he gets hit on the head and he has this brain embolism, so they're supposed to go in and try and get out this clot. So you go in and it's like a journey through the human body. And I remember watching this as a kid and being terrified of antibodies, that they were just going to be the most gruesome thing because they just cover up the little ship that they're going on. And Donald Pleasance, of course, is a great Rat Fink, sketchy guy. And Raquel Welch as a scientist as well, or a technician. So that they go into the human body and it's sort of the journey through the body, and they go in and out of this spacecraft that's really injected into a needle. So this is the trailer for Fantastic Voyage. Let's check it out.
You are listening to the sound of a completely new screen experience. A startling new kind of excitement. As 20th Century Fox plunges you into the most incredible adventure that man could ever achieve. To make a motion picture that crosses a new frontier may seem impossible today. Outer space, the depths of the sea, the bowels of the earth, the past, the future, all have been subjects for the camera. But now, a film called Fantastic Voyage has broken through in an unexpected direction to create an adventure of astonishing suspense and beauty.
One of the miracles of the universe.
Its vital news story sweeps down from the sky. Then it drops the bottom out of the world you know and understand. As a beleaguered nation desperate for survival launches a journey you can never erase from your memory.
We need you for security purposes, Mr. Grant. They know they failed to kill Benish. Security thinks they'll try again, first chance they get.
A woman has no place on a mission of this kind.
I insist on taking my technician.
You'll take along who I assign.
Don't tell me who I'm going to work with.
4 men and a beautiful girl, off on a fantastic voyage, actually entering inside the human body, exploring an unknown universe, unknown dangers.
They're tightening. I can't breathe.
24 seconds left.
After that, you're in danger of attack.
Come on.
It's sheer suicide for all of us.
You are there with them, sharing a breakthrough in motion picture.
He's gone.
If you thought it was too late to discover something entirely new on the screen, Fantastic Voyage will be a stunning experience. For you are going where no man or camera has ventured before. And when you come out, you may never look at yourself in the same way again.
Give me your widest beam. Full power.
that was a big budget movie back in the day. That was like that was like a tentpole movie.
2 years in the making doesn't seem like a tremendously long period. That's just how fast they were making movies.
I know that it actually, some of the effects in that movie were, at the time, like next level.
Yeah.
And the photography is awesome in that movie.
Very 60s. The Reds are out to get us, and obviously a lot of lady.
A woman on board a science experiment.
Sexism.
Yeah, like
4 men and a beautiful girl.
4 men and a beautiful girl.
I'm waiting to use that in a promo coming up. We'll see. It'll be the last one I make. But
yes,
yes,
right before HR takes you away.
Right. If they don't do it for just this episode here. Next up for me is Seconds, the 1966 John Frankenheimer movie. There's a lot of disturbing images in this movie. This is James Wong Ho DP'd it, and this is the last movie that they shot together in black and white. It looks really great. This is the company approaches this older guy who's like in his 50s, and he doesn't really like his life. His marriage is on the rocks, and his daughter doesn't talk to him. So they tell him they can get him a new body and a new life. So it becomes Rock Hudson in his prime. And there's a lot of sort of like science, and then it delves into the deeper sort of like paranoia. Brian Wilson evidently saw this movie and like walked in, and they thought this movie was talking to him and pushed him further into his psychoses. So that's a fun little moment for when you go to the movie. I think he said that he never saw another movie until E.T. He was just like, nope, no more movies for me.
I mean, in fairness.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
It's a good one to go out on and a good one to come back on.
So this is the trailer for Seconds. Let's check it out.
Bold, bizarre, terrifying. Rock Hudson, in an astonishing change of pace, stars in Seconds. Rock Hudson as a second, freed from all responsibilities, now ready to taste new pleasures. Rock Hudson, as a man who buys for himself a totally new life, a chance to begin again. Every man's dream since time began.
As soon as these people leave, I'm going to attack you. I want you to know that.
I'm counting on it.
Rock Hudson, as a man who lives the nightmare of being a second.
Why are you all staring at me like that? Hey, John. Hey, John. Hey, John. Why are they staring at me like that?
They know.
They know what?
They're like you. Reborn.
Oh, no!
So yeah, it delves into the who really are you, and be careful what you wish for.
A lot of 60s themes, really.
Yeah.
The ennui of the white male.
Yeah,
which is a very 60s theme. But it's actually way darker than even that trailer makes it look. The ending is so dark.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed it hasn't been remade, because it seems like you could still do a totally resonant version of this story now.
I think it was Multiplicity is what they were doing.
But it's really good. It's kind of hard to watch in some parts, because it's just...
It's like,
they do that mounted camera technique, which is an awesome POV thing that is
it's
totally...
purposely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then...
It's intense, man. It's probably Frankenheimer's most intense movie, and that's saying something if you know his filmography. But, yeah, it's an awesome movie.
And then last for me is Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, or Ghidorah, or however
Don't
you
call
want to
me
say
that.
it. No, you're... Please.
Wow, okay.
Which do you think you're?
No.
King Ghidorah? Do you feel like that's...
Maybe.
Okay.
Some days. I'd rather be Rodan.
This was the first Godzilla movie that
Is
sort
that
of...
Rodan up there? Is Rodan in this movie?
Yeah. Rodan, Mothra, and Godzilla end up teaming up to fight against Ghidorah. Or Ghidorah, if you saw it in the States.
Ghidorah!
Which is how they call it in the trailer. This was the first Godzilla movie that started to push Godzilla into being sort of more of the...
Goofy times.
Yeah, the hero... Starting off anti-hero and then hero. The plot of this movie is kind of bananas. It's
it's a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it's a princess is flying in, and her plane gets downed, and she's possessed by either a Venus alien or a Martian, depending on where you saw it. They changed it to one or the other in the States. I don't remember which one was which.
It was always Venus.
And then it was... then the meteor comes along and also then has Ghidorah come down and fight. So then it's Godzilla and Rodan fighting with Mothra, trying to convince them, no, we need to go team up and fight. So it's the first of sort of the
team ups.
Everybody come together, lots of
team-ups.
monster mashup. So this is the American trailer for Three-Headed Monster.
Nothing the screen has ever shown before can surpass the thrills of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Created from an atomic fireball hurled from outer space, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, threatens man's very existence on Earth. Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, battles Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan for mastery of the world. Men quake before the terror of their unleashed fury. All new, all never to be forgotten. A new high in screen terror.
Oh no, there's rocks on my car.
So that's they did King Kong vs. Godzilla and then wanted to do another movie sort of right away, but they'd messed up the costume a bunch, so they remade the new Godzilla costume, but they didn't want to mess that one up, so like when Godzilla comes out of the water, it's a different head. Like there's
this is when they started running out of money to do these, and they were just like, yeah, churn one out for kids. Which went on for many years and resulted in some of the Godzilla movies. Fun fact, I've seen every Godzilla movie.
Nice.
And this era is when they started sort of... There was a precipitous drop in quality for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing one every 9 months, it's...
That's when you get some of the ones that Godzilla fans recognize as legendary, like, pieces of shit. But this one, just because it introduces Ghidorah, is considered a fun one. And because it's got fan favorites like Mothra and Rodan.
Yeah. Non-flying Mothra, because it's evidently easier to make larva
Mothra for sure.
Flying Mothra.
But I always liked Ghidorah, and I also enjoy the MF Doom album King Ghidorah, which we have used music from. But I love the sound. I love the Ghidorah sound. That weird... Yeah. That sound is awesome. The sound design on the Godzilla movies have always been great. They have so many sounds that you hear once and you recognize for years and years. But good choice.
So those are some of ours. Let's check out the Adult Swim Facebook.
I'm scared, Billy.
No, it's good. Star Trek.
The Twilight
Zone technically...
show. Yeah, it's a show. It's
started in the 50s.
Started in the
60s.
Yeah, so we'll cut you slack on that one. It is a classic. It's my favorite TV show of all time. Star Trek? I guess that's 60s. Wow, bummer. I totally would have put Triffids out and Star Trek in, but
I thought you were just wanting to do
other
movies.
people are smarter than me. Yeah. Twilight Zone, Lost in Space was dog shit. Come on now. Doctor Who I get, but there are better seasons of Doctor Who than the ones in the 60s. It got way better. And then Godzilla, I'm going to just take Godzilla movies because...
Whatever movies were in the 60s.
The original Godzilla is in the 50s. But not bad.
Yeah.
Overall, pretty good. Let's look at the Toonami Facebook picks. And Twilight Zone, again, 2001, Planet of the Apes. The Time Machine, there have been many versions of that story, but there was a 1961 that I guess is what Joshua is talking about. And then, again, the original Star Trek. I can't believe neither of us remembered Star Trek. I mean, maybe you remembered it and chose not to pick it.
No.
Totally
in my mind,
spaced it.
It's not. It's 70s.
It's so crazy.
Even though I think it's like 66.
Yeah, I totally love Star Trek. I own the box set of the TV show. I've watched it many times. That's hilarious. Anyway, I'm revising my list. Up yours. Get out of there, Triffids.
No. When we
Star
do
Trek comes in,
some more of our favorite 60s.
That's true. We'll do this
later
again
on.
in a year, and then we'll be able to talk about some.
We'll
of the
just
stuff
do
we
TV
missed.
series.
So
I think we were both thinking of movies when we were doing it. So.
Yeah, we leave them open, and then we expect everyone to answer a certain way, and they don't, and we're always confused.
It's not a perfect system, people.
No, it's not. All right, well, let's talk about this week's sneak peek, and that is a game review for a game Dennis, our coworker, did, and it's called Stories. I put Dennis onto this game. We kind of checked it out, and I thought he might like it, and it turned out he did. So he played it to its conclusion and did this review for it. So check it out.
Ever wish you could go back and change a bad decision or choose a different path? Well, Stories, The Path of Destinies will have you turning back the pages. You play as Reynardo, a sly fox caught up in a world at war, which means a lot of your stories will end in death. But thanks to your magic book, you can always run it back again. Along the way, you'll collect elements to power up your magic swords, find rare gems to upgrade your gauntlet, and boost Reynardo's skills with all the crows you can kill. Then, when you finish a story, live or die, you go right back into the book and start again. Better choose wisely, or you'll end up repeating your mistakes over and over, Groundhog Day style. On the downside, the battles are kind of repetitive, and you play the same areas time and again. But that's not why you play this game. You play for the perfect ending. I haven't found it yet, but I'll just keep running the paths of destiny until I come out on top. We give Stories a 7.5 out of 10. Crazy like a fox.
Yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah.
I only just fired it up and then got caught up in, really, let's be real, I got caught up in The Witcher and Far Harbor. But I will play that eventually, and that review makes it look more enticing. So thank you, Dennis. And then finally, we have a new edition of You Tweet, Me Watch, in which you guys suggest things for Dana, voice of Sarah on our show, to watch. She has seen plenty of anime, but not a lot of older anime because she's a younger person than we are. So we always ask you guys to suggest pre-2000 anime for her to watch, and it's always pretty hilarious to see her reactions to anime of yore. So in this edition, she's going to do the OVA for Gunbuster, which for my generation is an absolute stone cold classic. I love Gunbuster with all my heart and soul. So Dana, I hope you treated it well.
Yeah, no doubt.
So let's check out her You Tweet, Me Watch for Gunbuster.
Hey everybody, it's Dana, and this is another You Tweet Me Watch where I watch a pre-2K anime and tell you what I think about it. Today's is actually a little bit special because it's not technically from a tweet, it's from a verbal tweet from our very own Dave Campbell, and I will forgive it because I like Dave and he edits a lot of these for me and hopefully does not make me look too dumb. So Dave wanted me to watch Gunbuster, and I did. Gunbuster! It's It's an OVA that is also known as Aim for the Top. It's brought to you by Hideaki Anno, who also made one of my favorite series, Neon Genesis Evangelion. There's definitely some similarities. First off, robots are fighting kaiju. Does that sound familiar? Well, in this series, it's in space. Mostly. The big plan is to deploy a new weapon called the Gunbuster. So that's different. Who's our main players here? We're at a girls' high school training camp. You got Noriko. She's a hot-headed, young, clumsy girl, but she's got pilot training in her blood because her dad's an admiral and he went to space and disappeared, and she wants to go to space and find him one day because he promised. You also got Kazumi. She's a hard worker. She wears iron clogs and runs up mountains, and she works hard, and she's beautiful. She has sparkles around her. You also have Coach Ota, aka Space Dancy Fonz Man. He also sort of looks like Iceman. I don't really know what to give him a similarity to, but look at those sunglasses. You also got robots doing push-ups and sit-ups. That's crazy. Like, do they even have abs? You have bathing suits as part of the training dress code. And leg warmers. I just gotta say, that is some intense laundry to be done. Hand wash if possible, no fabric softener, hang dry. Who's doing all that laundry? Then we go into space. Still a lot of laundry here, it's okay. Time dilation plays a big role here, as does goofy science that not many people can prove or disprove because it's the future. Like, loosely in the future, like 2020s. So, bizarre love triangles also play a big role. You got Noriko and Kazumi and young Freud. Yes, her name is two famous psych dudes put together. Wow! I still love it. You got Noriko and Dolph Lundgren and his juice box, which Noriko considers an indirect kiss. I gotta respond with this. A kiss isn't just saliva. It's pressure, people. See, watch this. Like, if you got this, then you're like, you're too much. Like, yeah, that's how you know. Let's calm down here. It's a fluid swap. You also have a robots in space and kaiju triangle. Just lots of triangles here. Also, like Evangelion, things get really serious. Like, really, really serious. I can't say why. You should just watch it. The last part is all done in black and white. From the write-up and TV tropes on this series, the climax on episode 6 can pull tears from some of the toughest otaku. The downsides, the pacing isn't quite there for me. It didn't fully grip me right away, even though I really, really did like it. Also, an indirect kiss is not from a juice box. Get it together. But I'm all about girls fighting and robots in space, even if they're wearing bathing suits and Sub-Zero masks. This is Dana saying thanks for watching. If you have a recommendation for me, please send it to @DanaIsAGirl. For you tweet me watch pre-2K anime. I'll talk about it here. Bye.
Well, thank you, Dana. Always interesting to see Dana's perspective on stuff that I know like the back of my hand. I love seeing people exposed to new things, even if it's like I'm always surprised by their reaction, whether it's positive or negative. And finally, we have this week's Adult Swim single. So every week for 25 weeks, we are releasing one new free song a week by an artist across all different genres. And this week's artist, the song premiered on Wednesday. This week's artist is Clark, who made one of my favorite albums last year and who I reached out to because I think his music is amazing. Fun fact, he also produced last week's Dawn Richards track that we premiered. I didn't know that until she said so yesterday. But anyway, so it's 2 Clark jams in a row. So this is a really awesome 7-minute song that starts out as sort of a techno workout and then turns into an ambient thing. Clark is amazing because he can do stuff that feels like scores, but he can do more percussive stuff too. So let's check out this week's Adult Swim single from Clark. Hot Jam. So you can get that song at adultswim.com/singles, and please come back every week for a new song from a different artist for the next, at this point, it'll be 21 weeks. That concludes our broadcast for today.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Later.